If I could ask a question myself first. I understand that Easter Monday has been scrapped this year. Why can't that fixture be used for the Magic Weekend?
I just think it's important that we talk about player welfare a lot. We talk about state of mind, we have concussion protocols and HIAs, and yet over Easter we insist on everybody playing twice in 4 days. It's not right, and it's not those 2 games over Easter, it's the one after that. The standard is terrible. It's just players who are only able to do the best they can under severe duress. Sometimes it's even the week after that. That 4 games in 2.5 weeks, it's too much. I think what we need to do is be creative with the Easter weekend and spread the matches out so that we can still have games on TV Thursday, if they're still going with Thursdays, Friday, maybe Saturday, maybe Sunday and Monday, and just give everybody a chance to play once over Easter and maximise the crowds. Because the crowds, again, are brilliant on Good Friday, they're normally the derby fix. They're not quite so good on Easter Monday. So it's a wise decision, but it just makes the season longer, which is the downside for me.
Anybody got any questions? I'll just start down there. I'll come to you, Mary.
You say Toronto for at £10,000 the final. Do you think they'll fetch that much to Super League next year, away games?
Well, we know a good lady who's Sandra, who I think she organises the away trips, and I think, well, to be honest with you, a maximum of only 250 to 300. You know, not going to be anywhere near that sort of crowd, but obviously they're looking place in Toronto. But as Phil mentioned, you know, there may be more people than what London did. There'll certainly be more people at Catalans. I was for sure, you know, Catalans there'll be many others from there, but at the end of the day, they're here. You know, if you want to embrace it. If not, well, not. But certainly in Toronto, they'll certainly get 10,000 people from there. But also, if they're going to be a success, you know, because they've got a team that full of journeymen, to be honest with you know, so if they're going to compete in Super League and looking to making sure they're not fighting in the bottom four, they're going to have to sign some players. They're going to have to sign at least, I would say, between 8 and 10 players. So what sort of quality are they going to bring as well in Super League from a player's point of view?
At least they don't have any cowbells. You know, that's just one thing we can be thankful for. So what will be with Toronto. We'll see next year. It'll be interesting. We've already seen today on social media people saying they're going to plan the trip to come to the Magic Weekend. So at least that brings some money into the sport, if not to the clubs themselves individually. But it is a perfect opportunity, as we saw with York last year in the Championship or League One or whatever it was. No, League One in the first year, wasn't it? Where they sold that game to people at large in their community who may not go to a game and say, look, it's York versus Toronto, and that's the same opportunity that every club has in Super League. What we do know is the clubs themselves, whether you're Toronto or playing whoever, the clubs don't do enough to get people through the gates who don't watch Rugby League week in, week out. And that's not Toronto's fault, and it's not Catalan's fault. It's the fact that they don't do enough work themselves.
When they're in League One, virtually every opposition's attendance was the highest of the season. When they were in the Championship, more than weren't were the highest attendance of the season. We look at maybe going once a year. You're saying, are they going to come over 15 times a year? Clearly they're not. But the issue for me is not how many they bring over here. It's at the moment their support base is above over half of the Super League teams that are currently playing in the division. So if they can get 10,000, we're talking about upgrading Lamport Stadium over the winter. And the other thing that Gary says that I think is very important is one thing they will do is they will sign 2 marquee players. And the sort of players they are looking at will open the eyes of people who don't really follow the sport week in, week out. So you might find that there's some rugby union players who are well-known names that start coming and playing rugby league. And Gary will tell you, when he played in the late 80s, early 90s, the coming over of the Jonathan Davises and Kevin Ellises and various, I was going to say on the tape.
John Gallagher.
John Gallagher was, I mean, whether he could play the game or not, was a massive signing.
Yeah, but it was rubbish.
Yeah, but when he signed, the whole of the sporting world stopped and said, that is a massive coup. Now, if they were to go out and get Sonny Bill Williams, who's on their radar, there's no other Super League club that could do that. So again, I think we have to reserve judgment. I think they bring a hell of a lot more than they detract. And they could, and we won't know until they've done it for 2 or 3 years, it could be the key to the future.
Must be my turn. Hey up, guys. The loop fixtures. How stupid do you think they are? And how unfair does it make an accurate league table? What could be put in its place? And who's going to get Toronto 3 times this season? My money, it won't be St Helens, it won't be Wigan, and it won't be Leeds.
I wish I knew off the top of my
What
head.
is your views?
Sorry, I wish I knew off the top of my head because I know it's the same as last year, isn't it, the fixture format? So the teams have finished, not exactly where they were the year before, but it would result in the same fixtures. So Wakefield went to London twice, so Wakefield will go to Toronto twice, or play Toronto away from home twice, which is interesting, isn't it? No one likes league fixtures. Phil's a big advocate of getting rid of more games because we have too many games. What you replace them with, I don't know, because the players won't accept less money, will they? And we all know the Players' Union do a great job of sorting out all the issues the players have, like cheap coffee or something, not paying pension bills. And the clubs won't accept less money from Sky for less games because they want more money. So, how are we going to get more money in less games? Phil, go on, Matthew. You know all the answers.
I don't have all the answers. It's not about the number of games. You can still give Sky the same number of games. They just broadcast more of them on one weekend. You have to get rid of the loop fixtures. They're a blight on the sport. That gives us an extra 6 weeks. We can start 6 weeks later. How a summer sport can start at the end of January, I have no idea. So you get better quality games, more intensity, more interest from your broadcaster. And you don't get a skewed league table. You still, I think the grand final is a fantastic concept. The playoffs are brilliant. The top 5 works for me. Top 4 didn't. You have to reward the teams that finish at the top by giving them a second chance. The extra weekends, if you didn't fill them all with fixtures, it gives us a chance to have an international window. We missed out on that this year. They have it in the Southern Hemisphere. 6 or 8 test matches that are all played at the same time, various different levels. Australia play New Zealand, the Pacific Test, Lebanon play matches, Fiji. All of that is absolutely vital for the future of the sport. What do we do over here? We see Wales, Ireland and Scotland every World Cup, and we don't really give a toss about France, which is a real shame, because if we played them home and away every year, they would get better. We need to play Southern Hemisphere teams so we get better, but we have an obligation that they play us, and they're always a different kettle of fish over there. So I think there's loads of things you can do, but you have to reduce the workload. I think the other thing about you saying players will be paid less, they won't. At the moment, and for the next 2 years, the salary cap is covered by the money we get from Sky. So the clubs have no excuse to go back to the players and say, we will give you less money. That money paid by Sky covers the entire salary cap. And these guys deserve the money that they get, and more of it, not less of it. Where we go in 2021, that is a much more difficult question. As regards loop fixtures, because Toronto will not play any fixtures in Canada to the end of April, their loop fixtures will be at the beginning of the season. So if it is Wakefield, they might be playing one game in London, and they might be playing one game later in the season in Canada. But every team will only go to Canada once.
Simple for me. I would make Super League a 40-team competition. Home and away, 26 games, a magic weekend, simplicity. That's what I would do.
We should just leave out the story because this makes it simple for them. Get Rob Ellison out, get Balfour out. I think someone just said that on the video before. And get Scully in. Scully for the RFL, everyone agree? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I don't.
Don't tweet that.
I'll delete that one, that's okay. That was straight down at Castleford in Belle Isle. We never see that again.
Gold chain and dressing gown. It's
that the challenge. Come on, what's the sound now? Melt it down.
Playing late twice away before we're playing them at home.
I've got a question about Toronto. So I I don't actually agree to being in league personally, because I don't think how it's going to help us at all, and I know Phil disagrees with me. But my most biggest concerns are with this is player welfare. If somebody plays on a Sunday and then they have to fly to Toronto and play on a Thursday because you know Sky's going to put every Toronto game on telly, how on earth do then players get rid of that game? And it's just going to impact some teams more than others. I do not agree to that whatsoever. We're talking about welfare for the Easter fixture. That's just as bad, if not worse, than the Easter fixtures travelling to Catalan. You might draw Catalan, then Toronto within a week. How on earth does that work? And it's going to happen to somebody. And then who foots the bills for all these? Some at clubs like we're not the richest club in the league. And who actually pays for those flights? Like, you know, I think they should start their own league with New York and everybody up there and just stick to that and then leave us and get York and London in and have a 14-team league.
There is no other rugby league in North America at the moment. They couldn't play New York or Ottawa because they don't exist. Toronto pay all the flights for every team that goes out there. It won't cost a club a penny. Nobody will play on a Sunday who would have to play in Toronto on a Thursday. And I think there is a willingness among those who do the fixture list to obviously not send people to Catalan and then Toronto. But the problem we've got is that there is no regulation at the moment. There are teams that go out to Catalan straight, at the same time as having played in a Challenge Cup tie the week before, and that's on the BBC. And we do need to decide what we want, but don't worry about cost. The whole agreement is that Toronto will take no central funding. They will leave it in the pot for the other clubs, and they pay for the flights and the accommodation for the teams while they're over there. It's a non-cost option at the moment, and that's one of the reasons why, because it's exciting and because it offers opportunity for the sport that's wider than the clubs we've got in at the moment can draw, we should give it a chance, in my opinion.
With Sky changing the fixtures though at last minute, like they do, surely that's going to have to change.
That's only at the end of the season. The Thursday night games are picked to virtually 2/3 of the way through.
The change that's like within a week, and then how's that?
Yeah, well, it didn't work in the Championship playoffs with Featherstone having to go to lose on a Sunday night and Toronto on a Saturday. But the playoffs are different because you don't know who's going to be playing in advance. And it's the same in Australia, that you could be going to New Zealand Warriors at very short notice, or they could be going to Melbourne. And once you enter into the playoff structure, sometimes that will happen. But I still don't think that's a reason not to bring them in.
Interesting to see what's going to do next year, because as we know this year Toronto are paying for all their games to be on. Whether they do the same again next year or not, whether there is a buy-in from a broadcaster in North America or not, I don't know. Whether anyone's willing to pay for an alien sport. I've used the example before on the show. If I put a Canadian football team, which is a sport that exists, you may have seen it or not, it's like American football but slightly different. If I put a team in Leeds, I can't imagine ITV or BBC will be rushing at my door, or Channel 4. Oh, about the Championship. I've heard all the Championship acolytes tell me that Channel 4 are going to show Rugby League next year. They haven't announced it yet. I don't know what's going to happen with Toronto. No, the thing is, no one knows what's going to happen with Toronto. Maybe we should have got Brian Noble down. Next time, get Brian Noble down. He'll answer all the questions. Or Brian McDermott, he'll go down, won't he?
Brian would go down great.
Everyone loves Brian McDermott, don't they? On a scale of 2 to 9, how do you think these people would take to Brian McDermott?
Coldly. But he is fascinating.
Anybody else?
He doesn't like small towns, though. So where are all of us?
Every sport needs a Green Bay.
Can I just also say that you would only travel, every club only would travel to Toronto once next season? Okay, well that is a bit different, because that is an opportunity for party potential. But it's the cost of it, isn't it, through the fans?
Yeah,
It's not the same as going to Castleford.
but the cost now, you're at this real dilemma that We are told that for sport to be successful, you need to have an event culture. So when the fixtures have come out over the last 10 or 11 years, a lot of people who I know, the first fixture they look at, and they're prepared to sacrifice going to loop fixtures, because they've seen them all before, is going away to Catalan. And it's nothing to do with the result, it's the weekend experience, or it's tagging it onto a 4 or 5 day holiday. And I think that will apply to Toronto. Everyone I've spoken to who's been as a fan, including the Featherstone fans who had to find £650 at very short notice, have had a wonderful time. So we all have to make choices. Magic Weekend now is a choice that's expensive. Wembley is a choice that's expensive. Old Trafford is a choice that's expensive. Playoff games. You know, you can have 4 games in a month at the end of the season. That's expensive. We as fans perhaps have to get away from the fact that we go to every single game, home and away, because we always have, and that's the way we do it here. There are football fans in Carlisle that can't get to games in Plymouth on a Tuesday night. It happens in every sport these days, but it is the nature of the beast, and we need events, and one of the things that Toronto will give us are events.
I think it's a bit too quick though, a bit too soon, going too fast.
No, I think you could say that if they come in straight at Super League level, but the fact that they put them in League One and they made a conscious decision to over-invest. They bought a Championship team in League One, they bought a Super League team in the Championship, they will buy... I don't think they'll finish anywhere near the bottom of the table next year. I think they've already got a core of players that can hold their own in Super League, and there'll be some others who will make them competitive. So I think the game has probably gone the right way by asking them to prove themselves, and they haven't gone straight in at the top level.
Can I just ask, hopefully, a positive question now, Toronto? There are teams over there, all right, in the USA, but I'm not so clued up on Canadian Rugby League, but Philadelphia Five, Brooklyn Kings, various teams in the US. Will they gain anything? Will they see any benefit, do you think, from Toronto entering the Super League?
It's going to be a very long half. I think the truth is you've hit on a really important question of where Rugby League consistently lets itself down. That possibly is a question for as much the International Federation as it is the domestic leagues over in North America and the Super League and the RFL. We've got 4 or 5 different people now who are all tasked with development, but none of them have a concerted plan. Now, logic says that there is a whole college football, American football game out there, where I think Richard will tell you probably because he's far more of an aficionado of American sport than I am, but it's something ridiculous like 0.01% of the college players go on to get a professional contract. So there's a hell of a lot of athletes out there who, if we get the structure right in America and in Canada, we can possibly bring them into our sport. The fact is, they're not going to become rugby league players probably for over a generation. It's like what we were saying about Melbourne. Melbourne bought a team that could be competitive from the minute they started, and they bought Billy Slater, who was from Queensland. They bought Cameron Smith, who was from Queensland. They bought Cooper Cronk, who was from Queensland. They put them in Melbourne, and the people of Melbourne supported them because they liked the way they played and they were successful. And on the back of that, more kids in Melbourne are playing the sport, and 3 or 4 of them have graduated to the first team, and some of them have been extremely good players. But it takes a hell of a lot of time. You'll know from watching the game, maybe playing the game at community level, this is a tough sport. If you don't start playing it till you're 18 or 19, you've got a lot to learn. But if you can then go back a generation, get it into high schools, you've got a chance. One of the things Brian Noble did mention a while ago was the model that Toronto are looking at to grow is the Major Soccer League in America, and they were absolutely stagnant until they brought the stars in. So what kicked it off in the current generation was suddenly David Beckham, who was the most well-known footballer arguably in the world, decided to go and play in America. And people didn't care that he wasn't American. They just went, wow, if he's going to play, this might be worth watching. It wasn't that they found 7 or 8 American or Canadian players who were suddenly as good as Pele. They're not there. So yeah, at the beginning you have to bridge that gap, and I think you're right, there's a dereliction of duty if we don't include all of the guys who have been trying to keep rugby league going in North America and Canada and get them involved. And I know one of the other things the Wolfpack are keen on, and I don't want to sound an apologist for them, but I do think there is some merit. They want to get rugby balls in a lot of kids' hands. But what they're not bothered about is whether they're rugby league or rugby union kids, because we get really hung up about that here. There is an understandable history, and there's an animosity, and there's a division, and there's real scepticism about the two sports, and we've grown up with that. But they don't. They have no idea that there are 2 codes of rugby, and some are played with 15 men, and some are played with... They know that they're Canadian teams in a World Cup at the moment, and they know it's rugby. They know they're not very good. But if Toronto Wolfpack come in on the back of we're rugby, people will buy into it, and it's a great opportunity.
The only one we have compared to football, soccer. Oh, by the way, the Rugby League International Federation going to move their offices to Brentford? Is that David Beckham?
Nobody's in Bradford.
Nobody's in Bradford.
They might move them to Dewsbury.
David Beckham's a massive international celebrity, and there is no player in either code of rugby who lives up to him, unfortunately. So the problem we've got with Toronto and with America and everything is that we are trying to build something that does not exist over there, outside of a very small amateur level. In both, I know they've set up this semi-pro rugby union thing, but no one really cares about it out there, do they? They care about basketball, they care about football, they care about baseball, and they care about hockey, and they care about soccer now as well in terms of team sport. So I think some people, unfortunately, run away with it. The fantasy, rugby league is full of fantasists and dreamers, isn't it? We know that for sure. Many of them have become investors in rugby league clubs and then don't have any money because they dream about having the money they don't have. And that's the problem we've got with some people who look at America, look at Toronto as this great opportunity. New York is the latest one, isn't it? Who, if you've heard of the Pyongyang Pylons, they exist because I went to the Magic Weekend 2 years ago and you could buy New York City Rugby League t-shirts. In fact, the team doesn't exist, they haven't got a coach or a stadium or a player. But we've now got it into our head that we're going to have a team in New York, and suddenly everyone in America is going to love rugby league because, as Scully says, we are the greatest game on earth. But unfortunately, people don't believe that because they think it's baseball or American football or whatever. We have to be realistic and hope that somehow we can light a fire under things in America. Whether it's Toronto's success, whether it's New York, whether it's Boston or whatever, I don't know. We don't know. We need some kind of international game. And we need America or Canada to have some kind of profile. We're seeing Japan in the World Cup, in the other code. Japan have really bought into it. Even though their team's not full of Japanese people either. Australians, again, everywhere. There's so many Australians everywhere. Basically, we need less Australians. Or a real superstar. And some kind of endorsement that we can buy into who can say, this. What we need is, I made this as a joke a few years ago. Tim Tebow, great college football player in America, didn't quite make it at the pros, ended up playing baseball or something because he wanted to still be relevant. We need to find some kind of American footballer who sees our game, one of the stars, and says, wow, I can't believe they do this without pads, without helmets, and they get up and we lay down.
Well, I just want to be short on this because, quite simple for me, we know we've got the game in London, we've got the team in Catalans, but for me, we should be promoting what we've got. We're an M62 corridor game, whether we like it or not, and let's promote exactly what we've got. Tell people how good it is in Castleford, tell people how good it is in Featherstone, in Leeds, Wigan and St Helens, and let's start there. Once we have done that, established ourselves, i.e. from a point of view, selling the greatest game of all, promotion from that point of view, then we can start expanding. But unfortunately, we are an M62 corridor game, and let's promote exactly what we've got.
What's his question, Tom?
Graham, you want Mike?
One of the things, it sort of touches on what Gary said, that it's alright putting clubs in London, it's alright putting them in Toronto, but when we're letting traditional clubs go at wayside, and some of it, I guess, is through their own mismanagement, but when the RFL or governing bodies throw money at these expansionist clubs and let clubs die where there's 100 years of heritage. That can't be right.
Well, unfortunately, again, it's bad management, isn't it? You know, and that's not the fault of the RFL. The RFL can't be look at the clubs individually, 24 hours a day, can they? So it's just bad management from that point of view. But as I say, from expat, it's like again when we had the what was it when Celtic Crusader? What was it then? What do we call Super League then? No, no, Super League. What about the 3-year cycle? What was it?
Oh, the licence.
Yeah, when we had the licensing, we had Celtic Crusader as well, and Wakefield was supposed to be kicked out, and because then the Celtic Crusader was skint and they couldn't maintain it. Well, we tried Rugby League in Wales for how many years, but we all know the Welsh, they're just literally stonebound and Rugby Union. I couldn't care less about how many, with the Wales situation. We are not going to be a quality sport in Wales because of Rugby Union. It's as simple as that. London have done a great job. We all know David Hughes, how much money he's put on. I think David Hughes has put around about between 15 20 million pounds his own money. Unfortunately for London, what they have never had. They've never had that stability where they've just played up ground, have they? But when you look at the job what they've done this year from there and the way they're competing, it's been marvellous from there. But as far as clubs themselves, with the financial situation, well, that's just bad management, isn't it? But as Mr. Olsen has said in Super League, he's looking for all the superstars. We're looking to put Rugby League on the map. But I agree with you totally. We need to look after the own backyard first before we start going further, because we've got to come down the road and win the 1895 Cup. They won the Challenge Cup in 1998. We won the magnificent performances that's ever been in the Challenge Cup in Sheffield. Well, Sheffield, they've not got their own ground. What was Sheffield getting crowds? 6, 7, 800? I think that tells the story.
Disagree. But you can see that Super League's going to do the same when it's no longer an event, when certainly like we've played so many Thursday night games now that fans just go and just watch it on TV.
The problem we've got, and this is by dint of history, is the fact that we're a TV sport, because when the transmitters went up in the 50s and the 60s, we were great Northern entertainment to fill the airwaves. And the problem we've got is, the Super League show's already only shown in the North on a Monday night at 1 a.m. in the morning for people who are insomniacs and need, if anyone actually wants to, I don't know. We could become one of those sports who disappears. It could happen very easily, like Speedway. And I always use Speedway, and it upsets really hardcore Speedway fanatics who do exist. There you go. There's one. There's the representative of the country. We could become Speedway. I'm thinking around the TV, I was watching BBC Scotland, which does exist. We're paying for it, everybody. And they show Shinty on there. Well, they don't show it nationwide. It's not on BBC Two. They don't say, let's take Antiques Road Trip off this week and show the Shinty. We can become that, and that's the concern. We have to grow in a way that is sustainable. The problem for the likes of Swinton and the obvious example of Bradford. Well, Swinton, I don't really know what the whole argument is, because no one goes to watch Swinton, so why are we bothered about whether Swinton changed their name or not? If 200 people care, more people sign a petition than go to watch them, so what does that say about the people who signed the petition? As for Bradford, how many times do we try and keep going something that is obviously unsustainable, has been for years because of mismanagement at the club, which no one seems to want to accept, because they blame everyone else, they blame Super League, they blame the Rugby Football League, when it is their own fault they're in the mess they're in, and we all have to clean it up. But I just don't like Bradford, do I? That's all I don't like anyway.
Not surprisingly, perhaps, I take a contrary view. If we were having this debate 100 years ago, we'd be talking about Hunslet. They were the team. They were the first team to win all 4 cups. The industry in Hunslet was the heartbeat of this country. It was light engineering. There wasn't a train or a bus that didn't have either its whole or part made in Hunslet. Hunslet had 20,000 people working in back-to-back terrace houses, of which Parkside was in the middle of Hunslet. Hunslet had 18 schools, of which 17 played Rugby League. And the one that didn't was the one that was too close to Leeds United and was ostracised. But we're trying to play a deck of cards with a hand that we haven't got. Because if we're being brutally honest, Hunslet these days is a junction on the M621. It's light industrial units that nobody lives there, close to the ground. Hunslet get, and I'm not picking them out, I'm just saying we'll be talking about how great they were and how strong the sport was on the back of a team like Hunslet just over 100 years ago. Hunslet get £75,000 from the RFL. The RFL don't overfund expansion at all. My argument would be they should do. There should be positive discrimination. We should have had a centre of excellence in London 35 years ago when Fulham started. Every great London player is playing for a club other than London. You know, if we had Tony Club, Louis McCarthy, Scarsbrook, whoever still playing in London, they'd be a great team. And there's loads of kids coming through that have got no pathway in London. And that's our fault. We haven't done any positive discrimination. There is a case for saying that even in Hunslet, the game survives with the likes of Hunslet Warriors and the fantastic work they do, and Hunslet Parkside. And do we now need to have an adult debate about what the sport can offer in its different communities? Because Gary will tell you, because he's a Hunslet guy and he still lives there, that the professional club that represents the area have virtually no visibility. The amateur clubs are an absolute necessity. That all of the kids in the neighbourhoods that need a start in life, much like you did, and your mum was germane in getting people like Jason Robinson off the streets, and he's still incredibly grateful to her. That wasn't a Hunslet. That was at Hunslet Parkside until Wigan spotted it. Do we need to have this debate that says you have to have a spotlight? The spotlight brings in finance. The spotlight will be on places like Toronto. It will be on Castleford. Because every sport has to have a Green Bay story. And Castleford is a fantastic story of adversity against the odds and the small team battling the big teams. You have to have that. You don't. If every team is as good as each other, you don't have a story. You need different teams with different narratives. Featherstone maybe not so. Because I would suggest that Featherstone is only 14,000 people. And they built on the back of the mining industry. And that's where they got their players, that's where they got their sponsors, that's where they got their fans. And that industry isn't there anymore. So to get 1,400 people at Featherstone is a phenomenal achievement. But it can never be anything else. So we need to give Featherstone, Hunslet, whoever, a competition that they can win and profit from. So the 1895 Cup is a start. Batley can sit down at the beginning of this pre-season and go, we want to get to Wembley. We'll give the players an incentive. I was lucky enough to interview the Sheffield players after they won the 1895 Cup, and Mark Aston, who's done as much, if not more than anyone, to keep them going. They were in tears. It meant that much to them. If they can win at Wembley, if they can play in a Championship or a League One Grand Final at a venue, say, like Headingley, which to them will feel like Old Trafford, that can get up to 15,000, 20,000 people, like when Castleford last played in it. What a fantastic event and occasion that was. If you can give the team that wins that £100,000, which will secure them for maybe the following year or pay some of the bills that all the clubs find so difficult to pay, what's wrong with that? All you need to do is have a mechanism where the money that comes in at the top is filtered through to the bottom. And my absolute worry at the moment is that we have two governing bodies, one of whom does not care about the other one. And the danger is that if Super League get a lesser deal, they will keep it all and there'll be no money going to the clubs outside the Super League. And we've already seen in the last couple of weeks, Swinton's directors have all resigned. Rochdale's major two directors have resigned. Hunslet's chairman has resigned. These clubs need help, but it's not giving necessarily the avenue into Super League. We need to be adults about how we're going to move the sport forward. Because all of the things we had, all of the schools, all of the industries, this is a rare thing being in a working men's club. Every working men's club had a team. Every suburb had a team. That infrastructure isn't there anymore. Kids go to school in Hunslet to 2 academies. Not those 18 schools. Those 18 schools they went to were the schools that their fathers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers had been to, and they all played rugby league. So as soon as they arrived at school, they trialled for the rugby league team. The academies that have 2,000 students, even Castleford High, we have to beg to have rugby league on the curriculum. The fact that they're very good at it, it's going to be on the curriculum in a place like Castleford. But we are losing the opportunity to pick up the next generation. And if we have to do that by Toronto signing marquee players, having less games in Super League, having more events, we have to look at that.
No, but should Matt Dermott have said what he did say about, big city clubs, a little club like Castleford and St. Charles shouldn't be there. I remember going to a meeting when Gary Evans said, when Super League first started, then he said, if Castleford's still in Super League, we're a failure.
People don't forget these things.
And it's from Castleford.
People don't forget these
I
things.
mean, us that's older remember. I remember Hunslet when Leeds did them. That's why Hunslet Club went down, because Leeds took all the players.
Everything's always Leeds'
I
fault.
mean, no Hunslet Club. They took them all in Leeds, didn't they? Showbottom, Seaborn, Air Brothers, a lot.
Not from Hunslet, but from Hunslet School.
If I was a kid in Leeds now and I lived in Hunslet, which rugby league team will I go and watch? The one that plays in front of 200 people on a Sunday afternoon, or the one on the telly with all the famous people? Unfortunately, that's what's happening, isn't it? Brian McDermott's comments were interesting after the game. He is one of the most fascinating people in rugby league. I always love listening to him speak. We spoke about this yesterday, and I was of the opinion that perhaps he knew what he was saying, but perhaps said the wrong words. But Phil, you have spoken to him far more than anyone, and you know he carefully chose. He knew what was going to happen. We all knew. I know the great underdog story of Feathers and Rose and whatever. We all knew chances were Toronto were going to win that game and gain promotion. So Brian McDermott would have had plenty of time to think exactly what was going to be said. Because he wasn't asked the question, was it? He said, no, you're not going to stop me from saying what I'm saying. I'm going to say this on the telly to everyone. Sounds like Scottish.
He's Scottish.
Apparently, yeah. Well, it's Buck, isn't it? No, it's from the famous suburb of McKeesmore. He knew what he was saying, and he was going to upset people.
He is an absolutely fascinating bloke who has a persona that he wants you to believe. But get him out of the spotlight, there's very few people who are as engaging as he is. And you might not believe that. I think what he did was pose a question to us all. And he said, if the sport in 5 years' time is small more than clubs, what will we be selling? I think that was his question. Picking out clubs is neither here nor there. I'm not even sure we should be talking about any club. I think the principles behind all that we're discussing tonight is far more important than saying, well, where do York fit into this, or where do Swinton fit into this, or where would Huddersfield fit into this? We haven't even talked about a club like Huddersfield. What do they bring to Super League? What do we want Super League to be? And I think Brian McDermott was saying, if in 5 years' time your grand final is Toronto against London, say, you've got something you can sell. If we're still... how many people this weekend are really looking forward to the grand final because there's a different team in it? If it was Wigan and St Helens, how many of you would go?
Well, watch it strictly instead.
No, seriously. And that's what I think he was meaning, that if we have another 5 years, and we all hope Salford win, from the point of view of the fact that, believe it or not, it's 2004 since there was a last new name on the Super League trophy. That's ridiculous. We have a salary cap so that everybody can win it. And we are not the NRL, but the NRL have a stringent salary cap where what happened this week, where the Sydney Roosters won, was the first time anybody had gone back-to-back since 1992-93. When was the last time we had that? We don't have that uncertainty of outcome that sport needs. When Leicester City won the football, how many, 3 years ago, 4 years ago? Did we all take a bit of an interest in that, even though we weren't Leicester fans? Because it wasn't Manchester City who bought success, and it wasn't Manchester United who were rubbish anyway, but try and buy success. It was a different story. And the whole idea of bringing in a salary cap was to have a different winner every year, because everyone starts off on the beginning of the season supposedly equal. And there's another point there about should you be in Super League if you can't spend the salary cap, and the answer to that I think is no. But I think what Brian McDermott was saying was, what do we want the sport to look like in 5 years? Which is the start of the debate that we're having tonight. And nobody's going to change their mind overnight, but it's a debate that we've got to have. And perhaps his mistake was to mention certain teams, but his principle, I think, for further debate was probably right. I'm conscious that he might have fallen asleep.
Anybody? Ron?
Ask him a question.
Can I just ask about the salary cap? I remember when the salary cap came out, the whole idea was that they wanted to get away from the same teams winning the trophies all the time. Wanted to level the playing field so that everybody could have the same sort of quality team. Well, what happened? They levelled it up, and then they didn't like it. So they then brought a marquee player in, so the top teams could have a little bit more spent, so that they could have a little bit better team. And they're still struggling, so they said, we'll have 2 marquee players. And I've heard it said that they're even talking about 3 now. I don't know whether that's true. But the Lancashire clubs, I think rugby league's been taken over by Lancashire. You think about it, all the finals have been in Lancashire, all the award ceremonies are in Lancashire, even the Castleford ladies have got to go to Lancashire, even though there's 2 Yorkshire clubs. It just seems to me that the Lancashire clubs are just now being able to pick off all the small clubs because they've got big money, got the people behind them sponsoring them, and they like to win. And so all the rules that we started talking about, keeping a level playing field, is all gone to pot now. And we've got the big teams and the little teams, and the little teams will never be able to compete again.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think that applies to the Wigan Council playing ball tax, I agree with you. All the big clubs and they're going over there, but unfortunately, yeah, with the marquee signings, with the players certainly, when we look at the overseas players, you know, they will go to whichever club offers them the big money. And at this moment in time, yeah, it is Wigan and it is Warrington, isn't it? You know, they've got Ian Lennon's got a few quid, Simon Ransom at Warrington, Big Sugar Daddy, you know, they brought kind of whip. Over from there, St Talents, you know, as well, with Eamon McManus. Our club this year as well, Leeds. We all know, you know, Gary Everton, it's not untrue that he's a little bit shy with the money, but because of the panic situation, you know, we brought in two marquee signings from Australia, Murren and Harrell, but yeah, the big name players, the best players, won't go. No disrespect to Castleford or Wakefield, but they want to go as the so-called bigger clubs, and it's the way the world is. It they pay the big dollars, and that's where the best players want to go. It's a simple fact, simple as that. Can't be helped.
So that's blowing the salary cap.
Well, Salford are there this week, aren't they? Salford are there this week, and you know Jackson Hayes is he a marquee signing for Salford? I think the great
Marwan Kukas.
Yeah, the great Dr. Marwan Kukas is funding his wages, so I don't know how that works with the salary cap because he's supposed to have no inclusion now with Salford anyway. But there's ways and means how people get around it. But yeah, it doesn't always work, I guess. But you know, the Salford lesson this year, it just tells you. But unfortunately, as we all know, the big name players and the best players will go to the big clubs. Like we're talking about Toronto now, and again, I just want to finish with Toronto. I'm a bit fed up with it, to be honest with you, from there. You know, they're looking to sign Sonny Bill Williams. Well, Sonny Bill Williams, what sort of dollars will he be? And he's not guaranteed to make it. No, at Toronto, you know, they talk about joining there, you know, but he's not guaranteed to make it because I can reassure you. I know back in my day when we were talking about Will Carroll and Dilly Guscott, you know, coming to Rugby League, you know, we couldn't wait to be knock his head off and give him a few cracks. You know what I'm saying? Welcome to Rugby League. But again, it's just, as you are saying, it's not a level playing field, but that's the nature of the sport, unfortunately. That's the nature of it, isn't it?
Back to what Ronnie just said, salary cap. Do you find that a lot of teams buy the way out of relegation? Because do you think London would have survived this year if some teams haven't done that?
Now, St Boniface was accused of buying themselves out of relegation by Bradford Bulls fans. The irony of Bradford fans accusing anyone of buying away out of Trimble is beyond me. The rules are there, aren't they? The rules are there for you to spend money. London brought in Lamb and who's the other one from the NRL? I can't remember. Yates. Teams obviously leave themselves room if they need to bring in players at this late stage. We don't have the advantage of dual reg in the Super League to need players from your nearest and dearest rivals. It's all about not just buying your way out of success, but buying the right players. Ron Wakefield were in that £1 million game. They brought in Tim Smith and Kevin Locke from where they were, Salford and Wigan, and neither played in that game because they were very naughty boys. And it doesn't matter if you buy your way out of success if you stay up. If you're the team that stays up now, if you're the team that goes down, you'll find any reason to blame the team that has gone down. It's going to be a very interesting season this year because, as we mentioned, without mentioning the Tim Scroggins want to talk about anymore, we mentioned the salary cap, we mentioned marquee players. There's also an exemption if you sign players from Rugby Union. I don't think it's anybody willing to account with it because he was league initially. Flip-flop so many times, you forget, don't you? But Luther Burrell going to Warrington, they don't have to pay the full cap amount on him. So Toronto would have that advantage next year as well. So, and then, have they only got 2 marquee players? Ricky Latelli's the marquee. One of their players this year, I think I've been told this off the record, so I can't remember who it is, you're probably working out, was offered more to play this year for Toronto than was getting in Super League before that. Money talks, doesn't it? Unfortunately for us who rely on benevolent local businessmen, we see at Blackburn Rovers the obvious example in football. Jack Walker gave all that money. They won the Premier League with Alan Shearer and all those star players. But then a load of businessmen come in who don't have the money, don't have the knowledge, and you drop down the divisions. The challenges for a Wakefield, for a Castleford, for all the teams at the bottom end or in the middle who haven't got the big investment is to manage your resources well. Wakefield have done that with the players they've brought in. Castleford doing the same. It's getting the best out of those young players who want to play for your club and somehow bringing in the right players from abroad. I've not answered the question, which is quite good. This is question time. Well, I should be saying it to Fiona Bruce. I could say
we change parties midway through.
I could do, couldn't I? Well, I won the cash the other week, and obviously...
Right, shut up, Mitch. Right, last question, then whatever. Shut up, Mitch. Before we finish tonight, so the last time...
I'll answer my bit in a minute.
Yeah, the last chance to win the last ball inside by myself. So, my debut season back in 1984, 35 years ago. 35 years ago, I made my debut.
And the best of guys circles available beats and
I finished the top try scorer as an 18-year-old. Finished the top try scorer in that season, 1983-84.
For Hull FC.
How many tries did I finish up with as the top try scorer, 83-84 season? Don't be shouting. I'll put your hands up. How many tries did I score in the 83-84?
It was more than 7.
22.
No.
27.
No. No. Come on, I want a bad player. Bloody hell, fire.
Well, I'll give them...
How many?
35.
I'll give them a clue.
36.
No.
You scored 107 in 122
How many,
games.
love? 38. You are correct. Here you go, my love. Here we go.
38 and 32 of them were interceptions.
Against Cass. There you go, darling. Well done, well done.
Just going back to your point about the salary cap, which I think is very important. Every club has the opportunity to spend the same. There are certain dispensations for young players that have come through your system, which I think is right. And again, when you look at the previous success clubs like Wigan and St Helens and Leeds have had, it's because the core of those teams have stayed together and come through as young kids. There's an issue with that they need upgrading all the time, and you can't sometimes keep all of them unless they're prepared to take less than their market value. But there is no reason why every club shouldn't spend the same. Josiah Feckie, who's coming here next season, will not be cheap. You know, he's currently in the Cronulla first team. He won't be coming, he may not be a marquee signing, but he'll be very close. The issue for a club like Castleford is getting the ground sorted out. because it's not the money that you spend on the team. You can only spend a maximum amount, and most of that, as we said earlier, comes from Sky. What you have to do is maximise your alternate revenue to make you a successful business, and there are clubs that do that quite well, and there are clubs that are still struggling with that in the same way that they were when Super League started, and they have to look at that as clubs. I think there's two other issues. One is incredibly important, and that is that you picked out Wigan. And Wigan currently have released their latest accounts, and this is a Wigan team that won the grand final last year. So in terms of profitability and viability, they should be in the black. They posted a loss of £1.4 million, the largest that they have ever posted, on the back of the previous 2 years it being around £800,000 and £600,000. And their accountants, who are legally obligated to file comments on those accounts, said it's very Ian Lenigan dependent. We have no worries about Ian Lenigan, but what we do have is a concern that this is a viable business. Now, that's Wigan. That's not Swinton, that's not Rochdale, that's not Workington or Whitehaven. That is, at the moment, until this weekend, our most successful club. And they do spend a salary cap, and they do have marquee players. So I think the issue, again, is where are we going as a sport? I think the other thing you mentioned, the power battle between Yorkshire and the North West, that was behind the Super League breakaway. That for whatever reason, and I don't think this is uncommon knowledge, the chairman of clubs like Wigan, St Helens, Warrington, particularly Hull and Hull KR, who were both grossly underachieved with the players they brought in, were absolutely of a mind that the power base when the RFL were in charge was dominated by Gary Hetherington, and that his relationship with Nigel Wood was unhealthy, and that Leeds being overly successful meant that Gary could agenda items that suited his way of thinking. Now, whether you think Gary has the whole game at heart, which a lot of people do, he's always fought for an approach that is totally inclusive, I don't know. But the Northwest clubs in particular staged the coup to break away from the RFL and to get Robert Elston appointed. Now, I don't think that's done the sport any good whatsoever. And the fact that they've opened offices in Manchester, that all the press conferences are in Manchester, it's moved that power base away, but that was deliberate. Now, whether that takes us to the next level, probably not. If Robert Elston is the right man, if his CV has all the credentials on it, negotiating with television clubs, being involved in a Premiership club that didn't have the same resources as other clubs, being involved in a sports accounting firm, being at the RFL when Super League first started. If he's the guy, he needs to be in charge. He can't have 12 bosses. He can't be dictated to by Eamon McManus. I mean, Gary will tell you, one of the scandals, it won't come out. Robert Hicks is not the referee on Saturday. Now, whether Robert Hicks has been the best referee this year, we could debate all night. He's certainly been up there. But Robert Hicks is not involved in the grand final because St Helens are in the grand final. And after Robert Hicks was involved in controversy in the Challenge Cup, Eamon McManus came out and, the way we saw it, slaughtered him. Made sure that whatever the rights and wrongs of not going to the video screen, that has been used to stop Robert Hicks officiating this weekend. Nobody's mentioning that. And that's wrong. So I think you're right to bring up the salary cap. My argument last year was that London didn't spend it, that David Hughes only spent half of it, and we were all astonished how well they'd done because they should never have stayed up. But my argument is if you want to be in Super League, you have to spend the salary cap, because otherwise you do get an uneven competition.
While we're talking about referees, what do you think about the refereeing in the NRL Grand Final?
Oh, missed it. Oh, carry on. Yeah, carry on. It's not 6 again. Well, it's just a human error, isn't it? A human error. And I know they have the video screen, but it's a human error. Everybody could see from there. And we've been a set of 6. you know, the Roosters stopped it, but wanted to show the referee couldn't say, well, can you take that? You know, I made a human error, but I said it's okay, and then go back and check it was, you know, but it's one of those things, isn't it? That's what happens, and, you know, as Phil was mentioning, what makes us pay the price, you know, I'm not going to the screen at Wembley, but what I am a believer in, I said on the show after the Wembley Cup final, was referees do referee differently when they're on the BBC compared to Sky. You look at now, and it's the same with the other referees, and I get fed up with it, to be honest with you, because there's not just the referees, you've got the touch duties from there, but every single time now they are going to the video screen, which is, for me, at times, it's a nuisance, it's annoying, and I would, I've said it before, I've never been a believer of the video ref. I think we should give more impetus and respect back to the officials. The officials are only human. They're only human. They will make mistakes, and I would give the impetus back to all the referees. I would have equal touch duties instead of video referees at all games, and from there. But yeah, it was a big Rick, and one that I won't forget. But he's doing the final, so he's not. If he's got another week to go, where he could be selected. But what happened to Robert Hicks? From a point of view, for me, I find it disgusting. If you look at the referees this year, him and Thaler have been the best referees. Hicks, you would say, yeah, maybe just slightly better, but unfortunately he's paid the price by somebody who's very powerful in the game, doesn't want him there. And he's not even the referee, he's not a substitute, he's not a video ref, you know, he's no part of it whatsoever, which I find it disgraceful, if I'm honest.
And that's what's wrong with rugby league. It's totally what's wrong with rugby league. That you have somebody that has that power to be able to do that to an individual. We talk about the salary cap and what goes on with the salary cap. That's what's wrong with rugby league. It's not the teams, it's not the players, it's what goes on amongst people like McManus and at the RFL. That is what's wrong with rugby league, unfortunately. And wherever that continues, it's going to be tricky.
You see, the big problem with our game is not everybody is pulling the same direction. It's only self-interest.
Yes.
We could care less about St Helens. St Helens could care less about Warrington. Warrington could care less about Leeds. Leeds could care less about Cass. Cass can't care less about Wakefield. Wakefield could care less about... It's all self-interest. And as Phil mentioned there 2 minutes ago, Robert Elson is the head man of Super League. No, he's not. Because there's 12 chairmen who are running the game. But all them 12 chairmen are not interested in the game as a whole. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's all self-interest. And until we get away from that self-interest, well, the game will not be as what it should be and what we all want it to be. You know, from a point of view, as that word what's been said earlier, on the level playing field. It will not be. It will not happen.
Transparency. We're going to see it more next year in the women's game in terms of disciplinary, which is going to be fascinating because there's been plenty of things going on this season on the field, which have been dealt with off the field that no one knows about because nothing gets released. It's going to be fascinating next year when those findings are released. And the transparency of the RFL, who are still in charge of the discipline in terms of Aidan McManus's comments. What was it, the week after the transcript finals, early September?
It was at the Cascale programme, but the Cas played for you. Got beat 4-0.
We're mid-October. We know what he said. We know what he insinuated with what he said. This is why Saints fans got really upset about us for saying this, because people can't see beyond their own clubs. If Ian Lennigan had said the same thing to say, string him up. He questioned the integrity of a match official. That should be a massive fine, or whatever the RFL think. We're months on from this happening, and nothing has been announced about the punishment for Eamon McManus. He shouldn't be at the grand final on Saturday. He shouldn't be allowed to walk out with the teams or whatever they do. Because he should not be in that position having questioned the integrity of a match official. They make mistakes. Players make mistakes. Coaches make mistakes. Chairmen make mistakes in appointing coaches who are not very good. He appointed Kieran Cunningham. That was his fault, wasn't it? Should I say that? I don't know. But he did appoint him.
So what's happening with Warwick and Catalan?
Exactly, and the racist abuse at the semi-final, and the people running on the pitch at various things, and flares thrown out, and well done to Castleford going out with a statement and banning people straight away. Wakefield did the same as well. I don't understand why people want to take flares to games, and that's because people are idiots, as I've said. Well, you wear flares, I know that, but we've got these things that are clear-cut cases. I know the Warrington Canberra thing was a bit more difficult, but time goes on. I think sometimes they expect people to just forget these things. Certainly the racing at the Challenge Cup semi-final, which was a clear report from someone who has respect from everyone, and nothing seems to be done about it. Again, it's just been swept under the carpet, from my opinion anyway.
Just going back to your comment on the NRL Grand Final, I think we have to get away from the blame culture, and that whether they made a mistake or not, and they've released audio that says Whiten could clearly have heard that they changed their mind, that incident did not determine who won that game. What determined who won that game was primarily the Roosters' magnificent defence in the 10 minutes when Cooper Cronk was in the sin bin, and the difference in skill and ability between Joey Lulea butchering a try and Latrell Mitchell creating a try. And in a game of such fine margins, they were the difference, not whether a referee made a wrong call or not. The thing about Robert Hicks at the Challenge Cup final, and we saw one replay from one angle that looked like he may have made a mistake. If that had gone to the video ref, we'd have seen 100 angles. We may have even seen what he saw, which might put an element of doubt in, and it could have been overturned. But that was after 4 minutes. St Helens made more mistakes in that game than they'd made in any other game all season. Alex Walmsley dropped the ball 3 times. I don't think he drops the ball 3 times in a season. That's nothing to do with the referee. We have to all get away, and that includes all of us, from blame. The first port of call, it's somebody else's fault, and that somebody's likely to be the referee. It isn't. It definitely isn't.
Regarding the Warrington Catalan incident, we went with Castleford when Castleford went to Catalan, and we had exactly the same. We had beer thrown on us 3 times, and I went to the stewards every time, and every time they said, we can't do anything, these are important people. We sent a letter, an email to the RFL, got a reply. What's happened? So it's not an isolated incident. This has been happening all along. It's just that it boiled over when Warrington were there. Covered up.
You've spat at before there, haven't you?
Yeah.
Where's Boris to send some negotiators over to sort things out? Great.
Can we have one more question, please?
Yeah, do you not think we should make more of the fact that a team ends up top dog at the end of the regular season? We should make far more of that than what we do.
Well, for me, if you finish strong, you're champions.
That's what I say.
Simply, we know what happened with the Castleford, but and it was like back in my day, we finished talking to the champions and you have the old Premiership on there. That would still have a massive importance on there. But if you are the most consistent side, week in and week out, you're the best side week in and week out, then quite simple, you should be crowned champions. End off on it. End off. I don't be copying the situation of the Aussies. I don't want to copy anything Australian. But we are what we are. But one thing for sure. And I think Salford are big saints on Saturday. I think Salford are with my Saturday. You all know the best of the business of predicting. Don't worry about that. And because you can well imagine what the St Helens fans will be saying. Well, the Cas fans didn't they? Right, so you walked everybody. And Saints, what was it, 18 points? By far for anybody else. Yeah, they should be classed as the champions. But the legends told you, the legends predicted, it ain't gonna happen. Justin Holbrook, the Aussie, going back over between his tail between his legs. Salford! Come on, brilliant. No. No, for me, sorry. Well, my coach of the year was Danny Ward.
Danny Watson, wasn't it?
Yeah, even Watson. I know Phil was Phil's choice would have been who was, but mine was Danny Ward because us so-called experts, us so-called pundits, I think everybody around the game as well, apart from a London fan, would have said London maybe maximum 3 games. Maybe maximum 3 games. But what they've achieved, and I'll tell you what, they beat the big sides, they beat Saints twice. Forget about Saints sending a poor side. They still had a quality side down in London. They beat Wigan down there, they beat my team Leeds at home from there, and I said to them this season, so no. But as Justin, he apologised. I was at the Man of Steel there on Sunday, he apologised because the award before in August. What's all that about? We honestly, the coach's award, it was, we'd all voted on in August, but it couldn't be before the Champions Cup because we got beaten that, or else I would have got it, would it? But no from there, but no, Danny Ward would have got it from mine, yeah, so. It was very grand final Saturday, many of you? Come on, you've got to get there Saturday because it's going to be a max points. You know, I was there, events. You've got to get there, you've got to see history. Listen, you know on Saturday, this is what rugby league is all about. This is what we all call it a so-called rugby league family, don't we? This is going to be a max points event. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's not for a win by 7.
Max points, scene facts. Welcome to the 1970s. Someone saying we were Castleford rather than saying that. Regarding the championship, St Helens should have made more of it last year when they won the league leadership rather than just going, the trophy should be better. We've spoken before that the championship trophy should be liberated from Wigan. The Yorkshire Cup should be taken away from Huddersfield because it could be away from Sweden last. What happened to the old First Division Championship trophy? Because I'm sure Toronto got that last year. They got some rubbish this year which looks like come out of Ralph's cupboard. The problem is, as much as I understand where it's coming from, the first past the posting, the grand final gives us an opportunity for a big week of build-up on the telly, on the radio, and a big night in front of a big crowd at Old Trafford and the floodlights, which unfortunately the Premiership final between Team A and Team B wouldn't get because no one would care apart from the teams involved in the final.
I think you've hit on something really important, and that is, first of all, as Richard says, we need a proper trophy. You know, we need a JJ Gilton and Shield that takes 4 players to pick up to carry around the ground. But we need to name it after somebody. You know, you need to win the Neil Fox Trophy. Somebody who perhaps has won a few championships, grand finals. So I think that would add kudos to it. I think what Huddersfield did when they won their first trophy after 83 years, they relished it. And Castleford made the most of it because, again, it's first trophy after, 91 years. But we need to give people something to say, this is really valuable, this is worthwhile, and this is a trophy that matches the Challenge Cup and the Grand Final. It's a different trophy, but it's prestigious. And I think you have to have a Grand Final and a playoff series because we talked about it a lot tonight. We have an uneven fixture list. The only thing that sorts it out at the top end of the season is the fact that the top 5 teams get to play against each other. Not only do you have to be really consistent over 29 weeks, you have to be a really good cup team as well. You have to be able to win 3 or 4 cup ties, 2 if you're St Helens this year. And I just think that it works on every level. We get the event, we get 70,000 people at Old Trafford, which you wouldn't normally. But yes, we absolutely have to name the League Leaders Shield after somebody really prestigious.
If we call it the Gary Schofield Trophy, you nickname the dressing gown, wouldn't it?
It'd end up in Belle Isle melted there.
It's got the same shop as me. You sing in Morrison's car park, haven't you?
That's the problem. The Gary Schofield Trophy. It's all gone wrong, hasn't it? It's all gone wrong. We should just give up and just give up on it.
I'm going to do the show on Monday night with my dressing gown.
The problem is, you don't realise this, listeners. When we say, when you share a room with Schofield, he's never got any clothes on. Well, unfortunately, I shared a room with Schofield, and he will say, he snores. But it's absolutely true. He walks around with no clothes on all the time, answers the door with nothing on. This man is an absolute nightmare. And we need to start the campaign now. Forget the petitions about everything else. We need to get him out of the Hall of Fame. He's a disgrace to rugby league.
Right, thank you everybody. A couple of announcements before we say thank you to his guests tonight. Have you all enjoyed it? Yeah. Yeah, thank you. The next event is on Tuesday the 12th of November. It's at the Meadows Jungle and it's an evening with Rugby League Cares. So we're hoping for a good night there. And a date for your diary, the 2020 membership launch is on Tuesday the 10th of December and that's at the Glass Blower in Castleford. A tombola and cash players in attendance. Okay? So if you could put your hands together for the legend.
I hope you forgive me for 1988 for that intercepted charge. Can I just tell you this, the Featherstone fans haven't, when I did it in 1995 in the Challenge Cup semi-final, every time I go to Featherstone, the Featherstone fans, I still don't like you. What you did in 95, and I just say to them, I was only doing my job. Thanks for your time and respect, really appreciate it.
Mr. Phil Kaplan. And Mr. Richard Shawright. And have we got some gifts, Christine, for his guests?
Gas top.
That's great, that's brilliant. The lads don't drink, just leave it me alone. Thank you very much for this, thank you.
Thank you very much for coming, we really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.